A topic of much discussion surrounding the Winter Olympics is the very different paths of two Chinese American female competitors, Eileen Gu and Alysa Liu. Alysa Liu is competing for the US as a figure skater and won gold. Eileen Gu competes for China and took silver in the free ski slopestyle final. Both were born in the US and have a parent who is an overseas Chinese. Joining us now to discuss this is David Zhang, China commentator and host of David on China on YouTube. So David, thank you for joining us today. Great to see you. So talk to us about why this matters. Why is this story getting so much attention?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of it came from what the actions of two different athletes had done during the Winter Olympics. We've seen that both were quite critical of the United States government, but with different backgrounds. Eileen obviously is representing Team China. Now, the problem is in China, you're not supposed to have dual citizenship. So she still holds an American passport. She is still an American citizen. She has not given that up. And yet she is not giving any criticisms to the country that she represents. And I believe that nobody is really asking her when it comes to the criticisms, like the recent sentencing of Hong Kong newspaper tycoon Jimmy Lai, or even the human rights issues happening in China. And I think another point that makes it really different is the spirit in which this competition really represents. And both, like you mentioned, are overseas Chinese. Both have parents. Their parents had a very different story back in China. Alyssa's father obviously was a Tiananmen Square protest student who came overseas, and the mother of Eileen Gu simply was just moved to America. And it seems like their destiny, or you could say the path they've chosen to for which country they serve, is the point of contention.
So as you mentioned, Eileen Gu, she was born in the U.S., but why did she choose to ski for China? Would you be able to speak to that? Why is that?
I personally think a lot of it has to do with the education from the parents. Obviously, like I mentioned, Alyssa Liu in 2022 during the Beijing Winter Olympics was actually approached by China to do pretty much the exact same thing that Eileen Gu does now. She rejected that offer. She, I believe, even had to get protection from the U.S. while she was in Beijing. Her father obviously went through a tragedy of the Chinese people in 1989. So the education part, I think, is very important. Another part, I think, is what the so-called special treatment she gets. Winning gold for China as an American skier, it's what the CCP loves to do, importing foreign assets to essentially speak on behalf of the Chinese regime in order to paint itself as to add legitimacy to the regime. They do this with news. They do this with so-called authoritative sources. So Eileen Gu is an asset to them, and they've been able to use that well. But I think the contrast here, especially to anybody that watches these games, would see just the staring the difference between these two athletes. I think that Alyssa is gaining a lot of, I guess, a positive review on that aspect.
Okay, so you brought up Alyssa's history. Can you just talk a bit more in depth about the experiences that Alyssa Liu went through that led her to decline the CCP when they tried to recruit her to represent China?
Well, in some of the interviews from Alyssa and her father, we hear that I think this is honestly a reflection of what real Chinese people struggle through, which is the nature of the Chinese regime and living under that condition. So when they seek freedom and move to a country like the United States, where their basic rights are protected, they really cherish that. But then when we compare that to Eileen Gu's situation, she was born here, but she decided to go back to a place where many millions of Chinese are suffering. So I think with Alyssa's situation, she really understood her father's struggles. And even I believe there were some ongoing sort of spying or interferences, transnational repression on her father and his colleagues, even while he is in the United States. So I think a lot of that has been the impact on her decision to not follow through with going with Beijing.
So can you talk a bit more about transnational repression? Do overseas Chinese face pressures from the Chinese regime? And if so, what form can it take and how widespread? What is the scope?
Well, some of the key groups that are currently facing a massive amount of that is, say, Falun Gong practitioners, Uyghurs, and dissidents overseas, like Hong Kongers, and anybody who really is outspoken against the regime. Now, when it comes to the regular Chinese citizens who have moved to other countries, there is really a choice to make. Obviously, you're going to be faced with some monetary or even social benefits in China, and whether you take that benefit or not, it's really a choice that you have to make. I personally believe that if you do have chosen or you were born with the citizenship of, say, the United States or others, I think to maintain that citizenship, you should at least represent the country that you have the citizenship in. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case with Eileen Gu, and I think that's where a lot of Americans are seeing the or giving the criticisms for.
Okay, just one final question here. In the context of this apparent loyalty to China, this topic here, how important is early education or upbringing of a child?
It's super important. I think it is everything. I think parents should be teaching their own sort of struggles or stories. Especially, with my parents, they suffered in China, and that's why it inspired me to talk about the reality of China today. So I think parental education, especially if you have the story like the father of Alysa Liu, you should be publicizing them, and you should be making it known to your children that this is something that is a real thing that goes through people that come from China, especially.
Okay, David, good to see you. Good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.